to We're Not Wizards. We are the best. And also, we're not wizards. Enjoy the show. Bye.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for January. Because it's January. Well, this could be going out any time at all. I might be crazy enough and actually put it out in February. Who knows? It's all about organising. It's all about being kind of not only ready to organise, but also making sure everything lines up, making sure you're crossing the I's and you're dotting the T's. You know,
that's what I do.
And sometimes I get guests on the show that interrupt themselves before they've been introduced, but that is fine. Joining me, a man who's known for crossing his I's and dotting his T's. You know, he sometimes, he's appeared on this show and he's got his strange Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe type door, and what I say is etched to their own. That's what I say. And that's like a private joke that only a few people will get.
It is. Yeah.
It's joining me, the editor from Tabletop Mag.
Hello.
It's CJ Eggett, but I know him as Seggett Jeggett Eggett.
That's right. Hello. Welcome to the podcast. All those people who have been here much longer than me. Actually,
everybody's.
I suppose I should welcome myself. Actually,
it's like a tectonic plate of disasters moving. Do you know what it's like? It's like seeing a 3-year-old fall down the stairs. The bottom 2 stairs very, very slowly, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just got to let them kind of fall down. This is how the conversation's going to go. The reason that we do this podcast, for anybody who's joining us for the first time, and thank you for joining us for the first time. I take it was either this or 300 hours community service. That'll teach you to shoplift. Is because there's quite simply not enough podcasts out there about tabletop. You know, I've looked now, I've scoured iTunes, I've entered the search phrases, nothing.
Yeah. It's great that you're the first one. That's what I think.
Only. I've been forging it since before you were born. And the second reason that we do this is because a while ago, like way back, like kind of Beastie Boys time music kind of time, we had a young man by the name of Mr. Jarvis who was on. He was talking about his Tabletop magazine. And then he left or disappeared. We don't know where he is. And CJ's taken the place, and we thought, well, you know, we like to have the incumbents coming on so he can tell us, you know, all about printed and pressed trees. Now, we're going to cover some topics, which I emailed CJ about, and he said he's going to get me the answers. I don't know if he got the email. So the first topic we're going to discuss fully, and he says he's going to give me answers on, is board games, are they art?
Yes.
I don't. Here we go. The second question that we're going to answer is, you know,
it's going to be a very short podcast, I think. Because answer number 1 is yes.
The difference between previews and reviews, and should they be paid for? Let's. And the second thing, Kickstarter, is it a Ponzi scheme or just a 4-letter word? So that's what we're gonna discuss tonight. But what I did want to do is start asking you questions an octave higher. You said yes. I mean, at the end of the day, I asked the question. You were straight. Let's look at the actual physical evidence. I can post this on it. Do you fancy coming on the podcast at some point? Yes, I do. There was no any kind of hesitation at all. So, you know, I like to invite you. You said, yeah, when? And it was straight in there, so it was all fine. Growing up, well, that's how far we're going back.
Yeah, wow.
Growing up, okay, have you always been the kind of the creative sort? I mean,
Interesting. I didn't expect
I'm
that.
interested in, what I'm interested in is, as an editor, I understand that you end up doing like a business job. It's like, this is what I always find with people in managers and in charge. It's like even the boy that runs the car wash, once upon a time, he was the world's best person at shammying and shimmying and kind of like getting those windows looking shiny, and then all of a sudden they end up in the manager's job and they're going to count the number of detergent buckets. So as a child, when you were growing up, were you more on the creative side of things, or were you on the organisational type of things as a person, and what did you prefer to do?
So I think that's a great question. Yes, always creative, I think, to a degree. Always wanted to write, but I have a very strong memory of when I was, I don't know, 10 or something like that, and maybe I was a little bit older, I'm not sure. And I said to a friend of mine, "Hey, should we like, instead of doing whatever we were doing, shall we like make a book or make something like that?" Yeah, and I think all kids do this at some point. They have this like making of something, don't they? I remember him saying to me, "No, why would we do that?" I was like, we should write some stories and then like make them into a little weird book thing, and then we'd have this thing. Actually, I don't know if I even articulated that last part, but just this desire to like create an object. I have this quite strong memory of that. I sometimes think that that's always what the creative impulse in me is for. It's just this idea of like creating like an object, a physical thing, something real. So yeah, but I think also that I've always kind of been like a critic in some way. I think I've always found that quite interesting to do this thing of like navigating.
Okay, just imagine you walking up to your parents after dinner and going, "Now, we'd had bangers and mash."
Well, they'd read it in the review, wouldn't they?
And here's my 3-page review on what I felt about the bangers and mash, what potatoes you should use in the future, and why did you pick oven cooking the sausages over grilling
I like to
them?
think I'd be like a is it Jay Rayner? I like to think I'd do the sort of like ambience as well, you know.
We were in the kitchen.
discussing how they've changed the light bulb for a slightly brighter one because it's the one they had in the cupboard or whatever, and it's really ruined what used to be a lovely place to flick peas on the floor. That's
fantastic, and also quite scary at the same time. Did that continue through school then? I mean, were you kind of like, you know, okay, this is what I'm guessing, right?
Go on.
You were into potentially comics. You read a little. You read a little bit.
I wanted to be. I'll tell you that. That's the thing. I wanted to be. Like I understood. Like because growing up in England at that time, there was this concept of all this like American stuff because it'd be referenced in the TV you watched quite readily.
Yeah.
So things like a comic book store, but in Cambridgeshire, you just don't have a comic book store.
No.
You know, not a dedicated one where you can go and buy, like, in the American sense of buy, like, a load of stuff, a load of crap comics for cheap, you know. There was none of that sort of crazy kind of, like a load of little things with good ideas in. There was none of that, like, around. And so I wanted to be into comics. So I did read comics, but it was very much, it felt a little bit like the critic thing, actually. It felt a little bit like I was doing research or something. Like I was trying to find what the good stuff was. You know, and so I remember I read because our newsagents started running like the reprints, I think. Yeah. In these, like they're kind of like I'm gonna say like a mini omnibus, which is a stupid thing to say, but it would be like maybe 3 months worth of Spider-Man in one thing. So you'd usually get like a whole arc.
Right, okay. It's like the trade, almost like the trade paperbacks.
Yeah, basically they were still they weren't perfect bound, but they were. But they were still like that. That's where I sort of got into comics. But yeah, I was into comics. But it's like that sort of like I wanted to be was like a good description of most things in my life because at that time as a kid, like quite liked. So I had this copy of Space Hulk that I got from a car boot sale, and I don't think I ever played it properly. Really, I don't think I did because I didn't even know if it had the rules. But like this idea that there's this other stuff out there, and I didn't know how to get hold of it. And this is basically the story of a boy who grew up before the internet was everywhere.
I'm a child of the 80s. I mean, it's like, do you know what I mean? I'll tell you my exposure to Hero Quest and Space Crusade, right?
Yeah.
Littlewood's catalogue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And there was one picture of it. There was one picture of, because I got Hero Quest, I think, came out first. So I got Hero Quest for Christmas, or maybe the one way. But I remember asking my mother to order Space Crusade because it was $24.99 at the time. $24.99. Can you imagine that was a games? It was a semi kind of. This was the Games Workshop, almost the Games Workshop type thing. So you can imagine how much that would have been now. But I can imagine just poring over that picture, literally waiting for weeks and weeks and weeks. And
can I tell you about my favourite magazine spread of all time?
Yeah, I want to hear this.
It's a 2-page spread in a magazine which I believe was called Mega, which is the Mega Drive magazine. And I think it was the Sonic 3 issue. I think it was that issue. So it had the cover was Sonic and Robotnik facing off with a big 3 in between them, or something like that on the cover. The covers weren't very good of that magazine, actually. But now I think about it. But the spread was just a spread of 10 or 12 different controllers for the Mega Drive and their features and all of the stuff they did. Because what it, to me, presented was this world of this promise of weird stuff. And I look back on it now, I think, because they were all rubbish as well. And that's sort of basically what many of the mini reviews said. But it was just so absolutely perfect for me as a child, thinking, wow, this might be the best controller in the world. You know, it's got turbo and program. You can actually program this controller, which I think meant you could do the actions on it and it'd remember it in a separate button. I think that's what it meant.
I remember, and the one reason I remember 6-button controllers is Street Fighter.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is probably where it came from. Yes, yeah.
Street Fighter came out, and it was, I think, at the time, and people complain about kind of video game prices, but video game prices have kind of stayed the same. In fact, they've kind of got cheaper because I remember a copy of Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo was easily £65 to £75 at the time. And then it came out on the Mega Drive, and the Mega Drive didn't have the 6 buttons, so they specifically almost brought out like a 6-button controller. It had the 6.
Yeah.
It didn't have the paddles on the top, if I remember. It just had 6 face buttons because it had 3, and then it had slightly smaller ones.
Yes, I know what you mean.
At the top.
Yeah.
Practically, it didn't make any sense whatsoever. You're kind of like having to be like a spider.
Oh, you mean over the top of it? Yeah. I remember. Yeah, because I think you're right. Actually, I think that may have been why there was such a rush on creating those products at all, because there was this desire for people to play Street Fighter without having to press start to switch between kicks and punches, which is how it would work on a 3-button controller, which is just an incredible thing.
I remember seeing Street Fighter 2 on the Spectrum.
Oh yeah, okay.
So that was a feat.
Yeah.
Somebody should have a word with Ubisoft and say, look, I know you always struggle putting out a game, but have you ever looked at the stunning work that they did on the 48K Spectrum? Was it that they actually had a working copy of Street Fighter 2? Yeah. I couldn't believe it at the time.
It's a bit of a shame that it's Doom that gets ported to everything, because I think Street Fighter on everything would be brilliant.
I want to be able to play it on a fridge.
Can you imagine? Fridge?
Can you imagine coming in after a few beers and just going, right, that's it, Bison, you're getting it.
On the fridge.
Just opening the door repeatedly. 100 hand slapping it like Honda. Like that. And then waking up everybody in the house and they going, are you playing Street Fighter on the fridge again?
Okay.
So is that where you is that kind of what broke you into? I mean, it's like this. It's like, where's that tangent come from? It's way back there.
Yeah, sorry.
Is that the Space Hulk thing? Is that what brought you into board gaming then?
So I think I was already so obviously like literally everyone, I used to play Warhammer and stuff like that. I used to paint the models, used to build the things. Or rather what we used to do usually was we'd bring a load of models around to each other's houses, line them all up, and then do something else. Because it takes time. It takes too much time to actually play a game. So yeah, there was always that, and then bits of Space Hulk and stuff like that. There was always like games in the house, but they were the very obvious family games, and not super interesting stuff like that. And really, for me, it was Carcassonne that was my like actual gateway into the hobby, and that was when me and some friends we used to go to cottages across the UK for New Year's Eve. We just and set off a load of fireworks and annoy everyone locally. Or sometimes get a round of applause, as we did in Ilfracombe, from the people, because we went up onto the top, because there's like a bay, I don't know if you've been, but there's like a bay, and then there's a big hill at the top, and then we went up the top of there and set off something which was referred to as a barrage on the box, and it went on for about 25 minutes. And we could hear people's windows rattling from down below. Anyway.
I could just imagine you having a small notebook with you going, right, okay, I've got my notebook here. Okay, like, set the fireworks off, I'm ready. Right, okay. That was definite booze.
Yeah.
Didn't like that. Didn't like that one. We'll have to go somewhere else now.
Yes, yeah.
Who booked the B&B? You have to do it under somebody else's name. Off we go.
So we used to do this, and a friend of mine called me. He's living in Greenwich at the time, and there used to be a very good game shop in the Greenwich market. And he said, "Hey, I went in to buy a copy of Catan because I want to play that together." We'd played a bit of Catan before, but he said I should get Carcassonne instead. Do you think I should just trust him? And I said, "Yeah, well, I'll pay for it. You buy it, I'll pay for it. And if it's rubbish, we'll sort it out," sort of thing. As in, like, I'll take it off your hands. You don't have to fill out a pocket in any way. And if you like it, you give me 30 quid or whatever. And anyway, we took that there, and then subsequently between us. So there's this floating in our friendship group. There's a floating copy of Carcassonne that doesn't really belong to anyone. Particularly because everyone's bought expansions for it, and it's all at one person's house at the moment, but it sort of doesn't really belong to anyone because it's kind of on the move. Because we just, every time we went away, every time we went to people's houses, we'd always just bring something else along for it, and that was very dedicated thing. And then it was board game cafes. That's really how I got into understanding there was more to the hobby than this stuff. I was going around saying I quite like these German style games. These German style games. If only there was a word for this that we could all use.
Where did the writing then come from?
Oh, that's just always been there. Yeah. So, I've told this story before. Do you want to hear the how I ended up here story?
No, that's fine. Okay. Yes, of course I want to hear the how. I mean, it's not like, yes, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Always.
But just very, very briefly.
You don't have to be brief. I mean, we've got plenty of time.
Okay. But I don't want to, bore your listeners. But so I have always believed. Obviously, I've always wanted to write a novel and things like that, and I've done it a few times. It's just no one wants to publish them. I've done poetry. I've done other things like that, and that's all fine. That's sort of like proper writing sort of stuff, But what really put me on this path, as I see it now, is doing a stupid joke with a friend, which is I ran a music blog for a little while, where me and my friends would do a game where we'd go to like a random Wikipedia. It'd be click the random button on Wikipedia, click the random button on Flickr, and click the random button on somewhere else, and it would give you a couple of a title, and the name of the band, and then you'd get an album cover from the Flickr thing, and then we'd spend about 10 minutes putting together the album cover, and then I'd go away and write the review of this album that didn't exist, and it would always be their debut album, and I'd always write in this sort of like mock Enemy style. Anyway, did that for a bit, just doing these stupid jokes, and someone got in touch and said, "Hey, can I send you my album for review?" I said, "Are you sure? You know it's a joke, right?" And he says, "Yeah, I love it. I think it'd be funny." So I did that, and then after that, because people could see that I'd reviewed a real album, people just started doing it in earnest, and then I'm on PR lists, and people are sending me actual music and stuff like that. So I did that. I did that for a while, and I think that was my first thing of getting into the idea that you can just do it. The cult of done, isn't it? You can just do it. You just get on and do it, and eventually, literally fake it till you make it. Then after that came some years later came a thing called Etched to Their Own, which is a literary newsletter that I
alluded. That's what I alluded to in the intro.
Yeah, that we Easter egg there revealed. But you'll go read my previous terrible typos on various platforms. But it's every week, every Friday, I would send you a newsletter of poetry and prose and a little bit of literary criticism in there. So I'd sort of take it apart and I sort of tie it together with other things we'd previously covered. And that was cool. I did that sort of mostly free for the most part of it, and then people started getting in touch. So the early days of Fitzcarraldo, who are just publishers of the most recent Nobel Prize winner in literature. Right. They published the English version of it. They I was like an early booster for them, and they would send me stuff. Things like Milkweed Editions in the US, who are quite a small publisher, really. Yeah. Kept sending me lovely, lovely things. It was just just getting sent stuff and then reviewing it, right? So you can see how this becomes a thing, how this leads into where I am now. And so I did that for 2 years. I wrote some of those on I wrote those on a canal boat once. I wrote one of them in a bar in Berlin on a stag do, because I have to send them on every Friday. I had to send one, and so I was doing these sort of I'd like to say it was like, it's almost gonzo journalism, except I'm not looking at anything of the gonzo stuff going on around me. I'm like, oh well, that's a really good haiku that someone tweeted somewhere else in the world. Can you get that out of my face? And so there was that, and then the rest of my life is just PR and marketing jobs and things like that. A bit of project management, and then I applied for this job on a whim because I thought that'd be quite funny.
What's it? It's just
write about board games.
Should I buy one of those raptor dinosaur costumes that you get and then run about the town centre, or I could apply for the tabletop games job?
Yeah.
Let's roll a dice and see what happens.
Thing is, you're absolutely right. That's a great example, though, because to me, the raptor costume thing sounds terrible. That sounds like a terrible time.
I just want to do. That's what I would do. I would actually go to Aircon, and I would be like Mr. Blobby. Yeah. At the UK Games Expo, I would just be rampaging around as a dinosaur, and then obviously have to go and tell everybody. See, this is my problem for anything that I would do, which would be kind of gonzo disruptive stuff, that I would literally go around making a terrible mess of everything, but then have to then go and tell everybody that it was me that was making the terrible mess of everything. Right, so I got the recognition for making the terrible mess of everything, because that's how I kind of work. In terms of in terms of, and this is a highbrow question. It's as high as my hairline, which is pretty high. It's I feel like I'm kind of like Ant and Dec's kind of balding older brother, probably dad, based on my age.
Now you say it.
Shut up.
Spitting image for those at home who haven't never seen Richard. It's
I'm all over.
It's really like they're both here. It's strange.
It's kind of like, joining us tonight. Yes, joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about taking everybody up to £1 million.
It's incredible.
It's like, welcome to the jungle. The thing, right? Okay. So let's take it to the little bit to the side. I like to take my glasses off because I think I look better with my glasses. And then I put them on because I can't see. But in
nice
terms
prop,
of
isn't it?
It's kind of like, this could be your lucky day. In terms of...
No one can see that at home.
It doesn't matter. We're not doing it for this. I'm not doing it for them.
We're not doing it for you listeners, sorry.
I'm not doing it.
It's not about you.
Are you not entertained? And I'm not even going to edit this out because it's like, I don't care. It's like the middle of January, so everybody's meant to be sad. So I'm trying to cheer everybody up in my own special magic way. The tabletop industry is a funny kind of place and a funny kind of beast.
Mm-hmm.
When you're coming into this, because there is a huge fan base of tabletop people that also create content at the same time. And are you kind of relatively happy you're in the position where you kind of are, where it's like a commercial venture, a proper commercial venture, and you've got protection of editorial and stuff like that? Because I'm assuming that obviously, like everywhere that runs a magazine, you've got advertising space.
Yeah.
But the people that sell the adverts and the people that write the reviews are completely separate people.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I don't even know what adverts are going in to the magazine until I get the binder, which I can show you. I've got one here, actually. This is the one that's just gone to print, which is King of Monster Island. I finally interviewed Richard Garfield.
Wow.
Which is sort of like, it's very completed it mate feeling. But it's not until I get this fake version of the magazine that we print up to do final proofs that I know what ads are in it at all.
Yeah.
So we're completely separate. So yeah, that's absolutely correct. And obviously, most of the writers for the magazine are freelance, except for me and Charlie, and that means that they've got no exposure to it at all. They're completely pure, as much as you can be. Being a writer.
Just like when people are talking about kind of writing reviews and stuff like that, are you then okay if somebody says, "Look, I'm sorry, CJ, but this game's okay, but I'm not gonna kind of ring bells and say it's wonderful for the sake of it. I've got some real valid kind of criticisms kind of here that I have to bring up."
Yeah.
Are you just to say like, look, you've got to, I don't care, just write about it and let everybody.
You don't tell the truth. We'd be a terrible magazine. We wouldn't have the trusted position we would. If it's totally rubbish, we have to say it's totally rubbish. We have a review system which goes from must play to no, and what that no is answering is play it. And if the answer to your game, play it, is no. Yeah. There's something wrong with it, usually. Or there's other reasons it could be greatly disliked. But sometimes a freelancer or a writer will come to me and say, I really hated this, but I feel a bit uncomfortable because I go to a con with them or something. I will see them.
I'm likely to see them at dinner.
And I just say, you just have to give them the kicking. Because the other thing is, we're not just here as an ambient piece of content floating around the world. The magazine is itself a product. And as someone who reads magazines, if you are someone who reads magazines, then you do want those reviews where it is just someone absolutely laying into something, giving something that really deserves it an absolute walloping because it's bad and shouldn't have been made, and decisions that were made along the way were incorrect, improper, or evil or something. And that's good. That's good if you can, because that's good content, isn't it? That's something good to read if someone can sit there and say, read it and say, that was a great review, I will never touch this game again, and I will actually show this review to other people because the writer was so funny in giving this thing an absolute stomping.
Do you still really get, I don't know why I have to go up this octave, I'll try again. Do you do you still really get bad games?
Yeah.
Because one of the questions I used to get sent kind of a fair number of Kickstarter previews. I used to be fine. But then you get to a couple of them where you're just like, I seem to be playtesting your game for you and giving you feedback that a designer and developer would be doing because I'm kind of doing that job. And I've seen a discussion recently about somebody saying they've seen feedback on a video that a game's just got a bad design. Are we at the point where people are educated enough that, you know, the chances of getting really bad games or really bad board games out there, is that still a thing?
Yes, absolutely. For example,
Okay.
we're just going to go straight to the top here. Yeah. Little company called Ravensburger. They put out a really charming book RPG adventure fetch quest game sort of thing, based on The Princess Bride, a film I think's great.
It is.
The game is awful. It's just rubbish. It's just rubbish. It's just like, and it's one of those ones that I may have given it a maybe in a sort of like, if you're a collector or something weird like that.
Oh, that's
you could maybe do that. But
you almost went down the kind of video game, if you're a fan of the genre.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. Well, you kind of have to, but it was caveated with, you know, like, you're not going to take it out of the shrink wrap because you want to retain its value for a future sale. You know, after they've landed
taking it to Antiques Roadshow and they've said how much for this, and they'd be like, well, I don't know, about 10 pence per tonne. Last time I checked for paper.
And here's the thing. It's not like Ravensburger make bad games habitually, and that's why it hurts even more. You know, the fact that the system had like hints of horrified about it, but for kids, but bad in all the ways that those things can be bad. Because I think Horrified's a great game, absolutely brilliant. It's one of those ones where I think back on it and think I probably should have given that a must play. Anyway, and
just ask them to bring the magazines back, and then just send the back out. Send the back
stickers
out.
On them.
Send the back out again.
Yeah, yeah. I do wonder. Sometimes we do talk sometimes about doing a feature where I re-review something. Like
I'm always interested in that, and I'll tell you why. Is because I've always thought about that, and see, as somebody who has a blog and does a blog, I is good at the English. Is that sometimes, and I think the most recent one I did was for some of Osprey game stuff. And we got they sent out like the latest expansion, and rather than write a completely new article on it, I just added on to the kind of the article that was there and just said, look, here's an expansion, and I also made some kind of a couple of adjustments as well.
Yeah.
With you having the online side of the magazine as well, have you thought about, I mean, you've just met potentially, is that not kind of like, here's games that our opinion has kind of changed? Because I know that there's games out there that you play like the first 2 or 3 times, you're like, this is magical, this is amazing. And then you play 6 or 7 times, it's like, look, if I just do the same thing every single time, I'm guaranteed to kind of win, kind of thing.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, doing that online, we could do it. But most of our content production comes around the magazine itself, because that's the thing that has kind of cost associated with it. You know, if you were just a website, it'd be very different. And that's a very natural. The thing you did there is a very natural like content strategy for blogs and things that get the story out quick with something small, and then as it develops, you change it and change it and change it and change the URL and change the title as it goes and all this sort of thing, and eventually you end up with this like mega piece that is the answer to whatever question people were asking about the subject to begin with. You know, that's quite a natural thing to do. But yeah, just to come back to bad games for a second.
Yeah.
You know, it's also important to remember that there's more and more people entering the hobby than ever before, which is great. There's also more and more people making games than ever before. There's also a lot of people just noticing that there's money to be made in games and Kickstarters and things like that, who just think, my slightly offensive, possibly racist card game that I'm making for Kickstarter. The editor of Tabletop Gaming definitely needs to see this. And that's, it's fine. They're doing the right thing by contacting me about their game. That's all I ever ask of people. But we're not even going to review that actually. But there are bad games out there. I think we see that a lot. I think it's. I don't think we're past it.
I think, yeah. I think there's people who don't intentionally make a bad game, but they're too close to the coalface, if that makes sense. That they're not actually.
If you're doing Kickstarter previews, you've seen this a lot, where you've got people who've got maybe one good idea, and it's not the one they started with actually. And they should have taken a breath, stepped back, hacked their game in half, removed the soundtrack they're also doing for some reason, and the app and the 400 volumes of lore they're writing, and just focused on the bit in the centre, which was some innovative piece of mechanical thing that makes everyone go, oh, that's quite clever. They should have focused on that. And you've seen it a lot. I think it's because people mistake in that situation. They're mistaking the idea of a Kickstarter promise being the game rather than the actual game. The game has to exist and function. So we do a few like Charlie, for example, she'll do preview videos for Kickstarters, and obviously they're paid videos, and they are all wonderful products because they're paid. But but had they come in for review in the state we get them in, at that stage, we would. It's possible we wouldn't review some of them because they're not quite there yet.
Do you? So when you're talking preview, are you just is it a case of I'm just giving you facts and figures here? This is how the game kind of plays. Are you trying? Do you have to avoid? Do you have to go out and avoid the opinion?
There's sort of legitimate previews, and then there's paid ones. The real one, that's right. Yeah.
I'm not making, for everybody that's obviously listening along, I'm not making huge faces at the camera. I have huge opinions on paid previews. I don't have an issue with them though. I have an issue with how they're portrayed in the gaming space by the people that get them made for them, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. What we do for our paid videos is we do first looks. That's what we do. So it's basically an unboxing, an overview of the game, what the key selling points of the game are.
Yeah,
that's right, selling points. That's what that is. But if I was doing a preview in the magazine, for example, obviously I'm only going to cover things I think are good for a start, or are going to be good, or have something interesting about them. That's usually an interview with the designer or the creative element in the process, and it's really like teasing out what's meant to be at the heart of the game, and that's what we do there. So that's a real preview as far as I'm concerned. It's where you're actually previewing thing without usually without really having touched it, because you're kind of trying to get what you're trying to get at is not what the game will be at the end, but what the kind of intention is and what the creator of it understands as well. Because there's an Eric Lang quote somewhere about every game having a central metaphor, which I really like. I think is a really good idea. I think I used to say things when I was a bit closer to poetry and stuff like that. I used to say that every game is like a short story, as in it's like usually like a single good idea that is executed kind of tightly and perfectly and sort of kind of repeated on in one sort of bite. It doesn't sprawl usually. It doesn't do all these other things, and it's actually just focused down on this one thing. And I think I recently saw a quote, I forget who by, I think it's an American writer who said that the point of a short story is you can still remember the first line at the end, which is which is, you don't, that doesn't happen in a novel, do you? You don't think about that first line again. And so it's actually, that first line kind of matters in a way that it doesn't in long form writing. And that kind of ties into this idea of having this central metaphor, this little engine of an idea. And I think that's the same for board games mostly, and that's what a preview should be about, trying to discover what that is, so other people can say, well, and also to know if that's the kind of thing they like as well, obviously. There's sort of a consumery element to all these things, because we are talking about products mostly.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't like paid previews.
I don't. I just wish that they were kind of a bit more upfront for what they're saying and actually said this is marketing.
Yeah.
I think the problem with there's two sides, and I joked at the beginning where we were talking about preview reviews. Okay, my issue with preview reviews is education, and the education side of views from what a publisher expects, what Kickstarter expects, what the audience expects, and that to me there's too many people that get previews done that then call them reviews.
Yes,
and to me
this is wrong. That's
a review is
unethical.
just a final product. A Kickstarter is never going to be a Kickstarter review unless that product's actually sitting there. Because I know of too many Kickstarters. And this is really funny about Kickstarter, is that Kickstarter is a measurement of marketing success and not necessarily a measurement of a good game. Because I have seen a lot of games that are successful on Kickstarter that I have seen people grab with both hands, absolutely love, get it to the table and go, oh, I think I was sold a kipper here. And so, and I'd much rather maybe stick with certain kind of published kind of games that I know have potentially kind of gone through the kind of the ringer than maybe something. I think, and that's my issue. I don't. People want to do previews. That's fine. I think the worst thing is people that create this type of content that also confuse the matter by calling it, here's our Kickstarter kind of review preview, and it's like, you're marketing. And I'd much rather somebody was open and just said, look, I'm a marketeer. I'm a very successful marketeer. I get paid $1,000 per Kickstarter preview that I make. But essentially, I'm a marketeer, and that's what I do. And then I'd have more respect for them. When people are saying, I'm kind of like, I'm ethically fine and stuff like that and all that, and I don't want to get into that. But there are, it's like, of course I can get, and other people that say I can get paid for reviews and it doesn't affect my my opinion that I give. And I'm just like, okay. Yeah. Which is why I asked the question at the beginning about the editorial difference between the people that sell the adverts in your organisation and the people that write the reviews, if there's a absolute disparity between the two.
There is, yeah. So obviously, everyone gets paid to write reviews for the magazine. It'd be weird if we didn't. But obviously, I'm paying them.
Yes.
And the standards I hold them to is tell me if it's crap. So, and if it's good, you need to tell me if it's good. So, there's no thing there. What you're talking about people getting paid for reviews is being paid by the publisher, for example, or maybe their marketing company or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just rubbish. It's just like no one should believe that. And if you're paying for reviews, I think people get trapped because they have maybe not made a very interesting game, me, Matt Jarvis, Charlie Hall, none of us care about the game, and so they have to pay someone to make it look like they've got a review out there. Sorry, I put myself there in a group of like wildly successful editors, but yeah, in the
manifestation,
Mr.
Sure. Eggett, manifestation for goodness' sake.
But we're probably not going to run a story about their bad Kickstarter, and so they maybe have to go to these companies. But the truth is, and we all know it, is that they should pull the Kickstarter, start again, have another think. Don't put their life savings into it until it's ready.
But I mean, and that's the other thing about Kickstarter is it's moved from being a place where dreams are made and fields of dreams are built and sown to places where it's just like, well, this is our cash cow and let us get a couple of couple of million quid out of it, which is a kind of a different thing altogether.
I mean, it sounds great.
It does. I think the other thing is there's cross-pollination between the US in the UK market. In that, in the UK, we're not always expected to pay or buy or whatever everything that we do. Whereas in America, because literally you're always one hospital accident away from absolute bankruptcy, I can see why people say my time deserves to be paid for. So I'm not going to spend 6 hours playing your game, 4 hours coming up with thoughts on it, 2 hours writing it, and another 8 hours kind of publishing or promoting my stuff. I expect to be paid for that time. So I get that. And I see that, and it's really interesting because whenever I see a discussion on Facebook groups, there's a distinct two sides of it. There's the kind of the American ones which are like, I should be paid for my time, and there's UK ones which are like, I'm kind of going on the ethics kind of thing. And I know there's a bit of cross pollination nowadays. It was kind of, which I always kind of find of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they should be paid for their time. They're right, and people shouldn't be giving their time away for free. That's a big problem. It's a problem we have in the industry, which is people are too willing to give away their time to be close to games, basically, and it means that it pushes everything down for everyone, because there is just free labor in whatever form you want to it comes in, and that does make things very difficult. I mean, if you're doing something as a contribution to the culture, that's fine. That can be your reason to do it. That's perfectly good. But but maybe it's not healthy that everyone gives so much all the time, especially to companies that do make decent money. Small companies, that's completely different. But yeah, I think we do have this problem of giving our time away. But people should be paid, and they should be paid by people like me, right? Like they should be paid by a good critical group of media outlets that are properly covering things with their own standard slants and looks at things, rather than being, I don't know, the board game hog. Hey, it's the board game hog. Here I am. I'm going to say snouts up or snouts down on this one. This is my review preview. Whatever, that's probably actually someone. Do you know what I mean?
My opinion would probably change if somebody came along and said, "Look, I'm going to offer you £1 gazillion just for doing this." I'd be like, "Yep, I'm up for it," because again, it's like it's a hobby.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing, is that people start on this as a hobby for enjoyment, and then they end up doing the content creation side of things as a hobby for enjoyment, and then at some point somebody goes in their ear,
switches.
You should start a Patreon, and then it's like, oh yeah, I could earn some money.
I don't mind that so much.
Actually,
I don't think that's too bad. Yeah, it's just as long as it's not directly paid, because that's our subscribers are kind of doing that, aren't they?
I suppose. How do you keep the fun? And I'm going to try that, at some point, I'm going to ask a question that's not going to sound like I've been at a kid's party and nicking the helium. How do you keep the fun? And what I mean by that is, right, I have no doubt that you could turn around and say, okay, I have my own personal deadline, and I need to make sure that I get through these couple of games in terms of writing something or writing something up. So, are you? I mean, I guess if you wanted to, you could probably email a couple of different places and say, "Hey, let's do some coverage and send us your games," and you could be up to your arms in games.
Oh yeah.
But how do you maintain a level of fun? How do you maintain that level of fun to make sure that you still enjoy board games? Do you play games that you have no intention of providing kind of any coverage for, or are you very strict and restricting on how many you recover? Or
pretty much everything I play is going to appear in the magazine.
Right.
What I do is I mercilessly plunder the remaining goodwill out of all my friendships, acquaintances, colleagues, mentors, old school teachers, people I met on that trawler once, all that sort of thing, and I say, hey, do you like board games? Do you like to spend an evening being Aztec gods, but also just trading wheat and gold? and they say, "Yeah, I like board games. I've played Monopoly before. Let's give it a go." So but what I'm saying is there is there's like a social cost to this.
You're like the Amway of board games. You just try. It's like a multi-level marketing kind of scheme.
That's it.
Kind of trying to get them in. Here's my presentation and how we can have you playing 5 board games in the first month and then playing 35 board games a month by month 6.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So there is that. Yeah. So there is burnout, I think, with a lot of my groups, and I've realised that now. Which you can't just rock up and say, "Hey, I've got these 6 games. I need to play some of them, please."
It's literally, it's like, I've been in that case where it's like, let's go. There is a standing joke at the club. That board game club that I go to, that I will take a bag full of games with me to the club, and we'll play none of the games that are in my bag. And right. I end up having to corral my son to play the games with me.
Yeah,
and it's just like, I know it's a heavy euro and it's a 52-page manual, but we're going to play this through, and then you can go to bed.
Yeah, and not a moment before.
Not a moment before. And then if you need to take a sick day off school, then you'll be doing that as well.
But yes, that's basically it. You have to beg ground. So I just have to rotate my friendship groups, and there's groups of people who I suddenly think,
like that.
I suddenly think, guys, I'm doing a terrible thing here to you. You don't actually want to play this game. So what it also means is I do tend to try and pick games that I am likely to be able to play as well, and obviously, that's part of the job anyway. You look at the pool of writers we have on the books at the moment, and you'll probably see that I pick certain people for certain things. Yeah, and it's not that like it's not like that this is the thing they can do. It's more like, I know this is going to do something to them. Like, I know I've seen them be got by this sort of game before, so I want to see if we can do it again. And it's sort of, that's kind of the thing I'm doing there, like matching people up with games that I arrange for them. So yeah.
It's like unlimited power. You shall have this worker placement.
Well, yeah, no, but you know someone who's like, or people will obviously, the writers will turn to me and say, "Hey, I'd really like to do the Frosthaven review." I go,
but,
all right.
But would they? I mean, my question is, would they? Because and this is like, and it probably circles back to this discussion we were having earlier on, right? Which was, how do you review a game like Frosthaven by experiencing even the first 3 campaigns? You're not going to get all the way. You're not got to get all the way, because I remember
you'd get all the way to the end. But honestly, in that situation, it's not going to happen. So
just imagine Tabletop Gaming Frosthaven Special, July 2024.
Yeah, all the way through.
Here's a review.
Yeah, you finally played all of it. It's all right. Play if you like Gloomhaven.
Should have maybe bought yourself something else. Do you know what I mean? You could have bought a different. Could have spent less money and had more fun. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. And there we go. Next question, because I've got to say,
I'm pretty sure Frosthaven's going to be great, but
I'm sure it's absolutely wonderful. I'm sure it is. It's like I'm very, very excited to be able to play it. I am actually. It's kind of like one of these things. I've kind of stayed away. It's not. I'm like one of these things. Is like I don't necessarily like popular things because I've never been that. You know what I mean? So I like want to be a bit contrarian and stuff like that. But I'm like Frosthaven. I'm like, I could play that. I could get into that. That would be fine.
It's nice. It's nice.
Let's, because we're just doing it. I'm just going through your CV. I'm not, because the CV's not there. It's just I've turned the orange off. It's just a black screen. One of the things that people talk about is pitching.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not talking about singing.
About baseball. Oh, okay.
We're not talking about... We could be talking about... No, that's ice hockey.
Is it?
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is.
Is...
Or is that NFL?
There'll be an American person screaming, or a Canadian. No, there'll be an American person screaming at this, and a Canadian person being very polite.
If you'd like to make any complaints, please direct them at Ben Maddox of 5 Games for Doomsday. We just send him our complaints. That's it.
Ben's just Ben's going to come back on again. He just keeps on being successful and doing things like acting and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he does his interview. He does a better interview podcast than I'll ever do. Anyway, pitching. One of the things, right? I as I say, I write. It's like I'm dropping hints, but I write. Okay, I have never ever had the courage to pitch because I'm not sure what someone like yourself is looking for in a pitch. So I'm not asking for a full explanation, but maybe the top, if you could maybe even break down the top 3 things, if you get something landing in your inbox in terms of a pitch, what are maybe the main 3 things that you like to see if somebody's pitching an idea for an article or a review or whatever? What would you like to see from that?
We don't need to be pitched for reviews because we basically have reviewers for the most part. And that's to be blunt, it's the best gig.
Yes.
I send you games every month. You play them and write some words, and I pay you. And it's one of those things that also needs to be like hyper reliable. So it's not the thing you give someone for the first time they write for you.
Yes.
Because you can't. I wouldn't even, that thing I talked about of sending people the right kind of game for them, or or a game for them that will get the kind of review I want out of them. Because I think it will do something to their brain. That's part of it. You can't do that if you don't know.
It's all about control, CG, isn't it? It's all about control as far as you're concerned.
Well, it has to be a little bit. That's part of the job is making sure that you control the magazine into the printer at the final day. That's part of it. Is a little bit of that. But no, it's so the thing I'm always looking for is just a good idea, and that's such a cop-out answer, isn't it? But I'm looking for something I haven't thought of, something that is exciting. It has an obvious peg, which when we say peg, we're always in journalism or whatever, as you readers might not know, that usually means what's the idea we're hanging things on, and sometimes that can be a timely thing as well. So you're always looking for timely or important, basically, or just interesting. And then the other thing I like looking for is like utility. So if something appears to be very useful, that always gets me. So they're the kind of like the concept things that I'm looking for in terms of like, how is this going to fit into the magazine? And it's not that the person needs to work that out, but they have. But if someone pitched me ages ago, and it has been in the magazine. I've completely forgotten who it is, but it was an Arkham Horror card game guide. So they'd played every expansion.
Wow.
And they were rating them out of Elder Signs, and that's great. I love that sort of stuff because it's kind of like it's a bit like that magazine article I spoke about at the beginning about the here's 25 controllers for the Mega Drive. They're all weird and they're all rated and they've all got different things on them. It's this kind of like single sets of little bits of connecting ideas that are presented in kind of discrete chunks, and that's always quite nice. So I quite like the utility and those sort of things, and when that was pitched, I could see how that was going to happen in the magazine quite easily. It didn't actually come in like that. It came in, I think it came in originally as an idea to cover everything.
Yes.
But in a sort of like history of kind of way.
Yeah.
But then I thought, no, actually, let's find something kind of really crunchy in this. To say that one set of adventures is better than the other is enough to start an argument at a games club. Brilliant. And that's kind of what you want if you're making a magazine. You do want to create culture in some way, and if that exists purely in the form of Barry and Dave no longer talking to each other about their favourite Arkham horror games, that's great.
As long as they both still subscribe. That's as long as
ideally.
they still buy the magazine.
Ideally,
you don't care.
I mean, I guess maybe only one of them would have the magazine and show the other one and say, "No, he's right." And they say, "Absolutely not. No, the Innsmouth whatever thing is the better one." So that's just an idea there of how. So just to sort of explain that a bit better, just to say that came in as one idea and we changed it as it went. And what I really liked about this pitch, and this may be my second thing for pitching me particularly, and I know other people are different. I know, for example, if you're pitching Charlie Hall at Polygon, they've got like a whole pitching guide and all this sort of thing. They want you to have already done quite a lot of work on it. For me, I just want to know what the idea is, because I like working with people to get there, to get to what the idea should be. I like it. I like a bit of a hand in it to help it find its place in the magazine.
Yeah.
And so for me, the best thing to do is an email, and it's like 3 lines long, and it says, "Hey, I'm this guy. I'd love to write for your magazine, whatnot. Hey, I've got this idea. It's about, I don't know. Okay, just off the top of my head, let's do one here. The best representations of gods in games.
Wow.
Or something like that. I think I'd like to look at all of the Eric Lang games and other things, and try and match them up with actual deities, and rank them in hotness. Actually, we've probably gone too far there. But and then the third thing is just saying, I'd like to develop it in this way, and which is actually to say, I know I'll rank them in hotness. So just those 3 things there, and then that's enough for me to go, yeah, sure, because I get a lot of pitches that are like 5 paragraphs long, and it's like you could have written the article and published it somewhere else in the time that it's taken you to write down what you think you're going to write in the article. So just people need to come with the pure idea. Again, it's coming back to that idea of like, what's the central metaphor? We're looking for it in a game. We're looking for it in we're looking for the thesis of the piece, whatever that is. So you're going to pitch me something?
No, I mean my only idea was about how, based on the recent kind of shipping crisis in China, maybe we should reassess postage and shipping prices regarding kind of board games when we're shopping online for our next game.
Yeah. So that's me. If you give me that sort of idea, that's fine. That's a good like.
It's off the top of my head.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. It's like that. That's perfect. Now, if you started that off with, "Hey, I'm Richard. I've just invited you on my podcast." Next line is, "Hey, I want to talk about the shipping crisis and how people should rethink their thing, their purchasing decisions." And then the next bit, which is the little crunchy bit, which is, "Hey, I'd like to go get some numbers about not only the environmental impact but also the financial impact on the companies that produce these games, maybe, or something like that."
Yeah.
And that I'd like that to be part of it in some way. What do you reckon? And I'd say, sounds all right. How about we could do it maybe as like a cardboard manifesto or something like that, which allows it to do like an opinion piece thing. Because and maybe if you get a few crunchy numbers but not too many, that'd be quite good. We could maybe do an interesting graphic or something with it. If you get loads of numbers in, maybe we could do something like that. And then that's good for me. Do you know what I mean? That's because then I know where in my head I'm immediately like, I can go. I know where I could.
This is where I can go with this. Yeah.
You've given me something crunchy to hook on as well. And then there's the main strip of it, which like generally we agree with, don't we? That maybe we should do that. The other question is, the other way we'd do it is you could maybe go ahead and do something, again, a utility piece on it in some way, if you know what the answer is. My feeling is that there isn't an answer. Do you know if there's an answer to the shipping crisis? Because people want to know.
I think it's changing back, to be honest. I think it's going to come in waves. Because I think that the situation in China is going to constantly change with regards to COVID. And obviously, kind of knowing, I mean, I'm kind of in this strange position with doing the podcast of knowing quite a few kind of designer publishers and having kind of anecdotal evidence from them as to, and kind of getting involved in a lot of Kickstarters at the dollar level and seeing the kind of the updates coming in, people saying, look, we're $200,000 short. I might have to, I'm going to lose my kind of house. I'm just interested. I mean, lengthwise, are you looking at, should somebody be thinking about a 500-word thing, 1,000-word? Is that something that you give kind of guidance back on kind of thing?
A page is usually 600-ish words.
Right, okay.
Something like that. We pay per page, so that's generally generally how we work it out. So yeah. But people shouldn't worry about that.
I think. See, the thing is, I think people do though. I think I would do. That's one of the things that I'm in the back of my mind as somebody who does write kind of words.
Because you're. See, this is the thing. I did wonder about this because earlier we talked about the guy who made his racist card game who sent me a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's not happening in his brain that's happening in your brain? Do you know what I mean? like he's doing something right with the wrong content.
Yeah.
and you've gone, well, maybe he only wants
I know
2,000 words.
I know, but see, this is the thing. It's kind of like I'm George McFly. Is that right? And bear with me on this one, right? What happens, right? This is Back to the Future. What happens if I, send in the idea and he comes back and tells me it's not any good? What happens if he tells me not any good? I don't know if you'd know how you feel. And of course, obviously, Michael J. Fox says, oh, I know exactly how that kind of feels, kind of thing. And I guess I think that some people, and I was, what was I? I was having a conversation with my wife about this. And they were talking about it was really funny. We're talking about representation in kind of board games, in the board game space and board game media and stuff like that, and saying that sometimes you actively need to ask for certain demographics to come and get involved and pitch for you, because normally you're kind of your average white male heterosexual straight guy will just be like, yeah, this is my job. And just charge right in regardless of whether or not they're doing it. While everybody else kind of takes a step back and kind of goes, is this something I could potentially do? And they have a second thought. Whereas the guys are like, I'm already here, I can fix that leak in your roof. I've never done plumbing before,
but I reckon
I've got a spanner. Kind of thing. So that was what it's like.
That's a very traditional thing for job applications, isn't it? That and it's a sort of gender divide thing as well, I think, where most women will look at a job spec and say, oh, I'm missing one of the qualifications, a very minor qualification, and I'm 6 months short of the number of years experience they want. And me, probably, because I did explain that I applied for this job for fun, because I thought, that might be good. Why not?
2 out of 7's not bad. Let's go for it.
and I'd obviously done some things vaguely related to it, but I'd never run a magazine, for example. There's massive risk when they took me on, to be honest. Yeah, it was incredible. I do have to thank my publisher for seeing something worthwhile in me. But men will generally just say, well, I'm only 6 years short in experience terms, and I don't have any of those qualifications. But I'm going to go for it anyway.
Qualifications, smallifications.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that's basically right. And yes, so I think everyone should just attempt to channel that idea. Because the worst thing that's going to happen in that is I say, now we sort of covered that a couple of years ago or a couple of weeks ago, or I don't really think it's timely. We'd have to find a different hook for it, or a different peg for it. That might, and then what? You go, okay, well, I'll put it on my blog then.
They'll probably go, I'll change a couple of words and send it back in. Dear, dear Mr. Editor, whatever your bloody stupid name is, I believe I wrote to you with a perfect pitch some 3 weeks ago and you rejected me completely. I am now writing back as I've changed the words to capitalise the first word of every sentence, and I now believe that you should accept me and pay me much money. Yours sincerely.
Perfect. Yeah, and then you wouldn't get a response to that, obviously. That's what you want. But the next time you sent a pitch, I would read it and go, okay, that's good. Maybe we should run that. So yeah, that's it. Because it's it's a weird job. I sometimes think of there's that George Bush thing where he says, I'm the decider. I sometimes think like that was obviously like a bit of a joke and a bit silly, and obviously not fitting of his rank in the world at that time. What he was doing in the world, but it is kind of a description of what an editor's job is, which is you just decide what goes in. Then you just have to do it based on what you think is good for the people reading and good for the magazine generally. So
superb. What's exciting you about games at the moment? Is there any particular title which you're looking at that you've gone, rubbing the top of my trousers in anticipation? It just sounded like death. Quite.
So, are you looking for things that I haven't played yet? I'm just anticipating.
Yes.
Or are you looking for things I've recently played?
Either. It's your night.
Because I'll say,
and I'd like to say, anything that you say is not an endorsement of that game before you say that. So that
I'll definitely endorse one. I'll definitely endorse one though.
All right, okay.
Which is Time of Empires by Pearl Games.
Oh,
Have you played Time of Empires by Pearl Games? It's been out for weeks. How come you've not played it yet?
It's on my review pile. Over.
Is it really? Is it actually? Really?
I don't have a review pile. Pearl Games don't even speak to me. I saw them. I saw them outside Asda's, and they turned their shoulder. And they show me the sole of their foot, and they went, "You're not going to get this game."
Well, they've put out a real-time Civ game, a real-time 4X game.
Oh,
and it's hilarious. It's great. Would you like to play a real-time a Civ game where your meeples are sand timers, and there is a war going on as well. But you resolve it individually, so you don't have to do count. You don't have to do opposed rolls or anything like that.
It says like a fever COVID dream. Just
it plays like that, and even more so because there's a soundtrack that goes with it, and that soundtrack is there just for vibes mostly. But also, every time you hear a baby cry, that's when you build scholars, and everyone around the table goes scholars, and that means you put some scholars in your scholar pile, which can be used for endgame points. But it's a really, really neat, lovely little game. It takes 27 minutes to play. Because of the length of the 3 rounds of whatever. Yeah, of whatever. I think that's right anyway. And that's it. And that's the game. And you're done. And you've built and destroyed each other. And it's got this incredible. We're always kind of looking for something that happens above the table. The game is the thing that happens above the table between people, where they've fully internalized. What is it? Cole Worley told me this. It's like player position and player intention. When they're perfectly aligned, you have this thing where people are doing things exactly as they want to do, or as they think they want to do, and it's what they're doing. They've stopped looking at the board. They are playing against the other players. They're not playing against the rules or trying to learn something or trying to work something out or try and game it. They're really playing against the other players properly. They're really watching everything. Well, this game does that, but because everything's happening at the same time, you will literally do something, gain the resources, and then do something else, and then get the card that does the thing that builds a building, which takes something off, which will next time when you generate those, that will give you more things, and then that means you can put some armies on the board, or you can flip the other sand timer. You look at your board and think that I've conquered that little corner there, and no one's going to come mess with me over there. So you flip your sand timer over and look over here to the other side to the where there's some leaders where you can gain long-term powers and points at the end of the game and stuff like that, and wonders. There's that classic sort of thing. And you place a scholar on there, and then you come back and look at you have the sand timer. So, what shall I do? And you look up and you look at the board, and someone's gone and bloody taken that province from you. And so you're like, God, I'm going to have to build some more men now, and off you go. And then the baby cries, and you've got to make some scholars. And it's fabulous. Time of Empires. That's a game that I think is incredible. The review's coming, not the issue that's just gone, but the one after. But it will almost certainly be a must play. It's incredible. So that's something I've enjoyed a lot of recently. I really, really just want to play RPGs and Oath. If I went to the office just tomorrow and they said, "Sorry, we've replaced you with this bloke called Richard. He's on his way now.
I'd be very good.
You've got a couple of hours to clear your desk because it's a long way. I don't know why I agreed to the commute, and if they said that, I'd be like, well, okay, that's fine, because I've got Oath in my life, and I've got Troika, and a bunch of other RPGs, which I know could be the exciting thing in the future for me. That's the thing I sometimes think of, which is, I'll save that one for retirement. like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. It's like I've read most of the books. I've never actually played it itself. I've sort of mock played it a little bit, but. But it's one of those ones I look at all those tomes on the shelf and I go, yeah, I'll get into that when I'm retired.
So I'm getting there, and I'm just like, my friends are probably going to have all died. So I'm going to be, what if it's bad, though?
Yeah.
That's way to play with.
So yeah, in terms of stuff coming up, I'm trying to think what the problem is. We've just gone to print, so it's the bit where my brain's the most empty. I quite like the look of that scratch and sniff game. Have you seen that? Once Upon a Line.
I was wondering what you're talking about. It's like, is this back to that game that guy sent in that was slightly
No.
This guy I saw, was it Lucky Duck? I think it's Lucky. I think Lucky Duck's involved with it, and it's like you scratch off the different things, and it's like a legacy game.
Yeah, yeah.
Except I'd be like that. Oh, I've won £1. Oh.
Yeah. Go redeem a £40 board game for £1.
I've won a car, but I've won a speedboat. Brilliant.
That's it exactly.
Nowhere near a port.
Yeah, I love the idea. You have to go to the Lucky Duck offices in Poland to collect the speedboat.
And then you have to drive it back.
If you somehow have to get it back.
You have to get it back. And they're just like that. So here's your 15 invoices you need to take from you, seeing as you're importing from Europe into the UK. But that's a completely different story altogether.
Yeah, I think the hobby has reached a kind of maturity in lots of ways. I think things like Pearl putting out a game like Time of Empires shows that a company that basically made quite heavy euros, really. The fact that they've put something so kind of like, it's still heavy-ish, but so like full of joy. Just shows me everyone's just kind of relaxed a bit, I feel like that started with Lost Ruins of Arnak. I think that was the first time I felt like a publisher really relaxed into just making something just really, really good and simple. You know, who previously, I know, obviously, Galaxy Trackers, all that sort of stuff, they got the same sort of vibe, but it felt polished from the start. You know.
Yeah, I think also it's like so many people have done their kind of apprenticeship now.
That's right.
It's easy for them to miss out the first bit. It's like, and this is going to sound strange, but it's like watching Better Call Saul. But it's kind of like watching something where the characters are just walking in, they're fully developed, they're fully ready, you know what their motivations and everything are, and I feel for some board game designers, they've gone through the mad graft and everything like that, and they've discovered their own identity and what they enjoy making. And I think for a lot of publishers, they've kind of done that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think they've... it just feels much more mature, and I think it's in a better place than it was than when I first entered the hobby. Certainly, I think there's still bad stuff out there, but I think people have got better at making good games.
I think people are also better at also self-realization when it comes to bad stuff, and not just putting something out there just for the sake of it.
That's it.
Now, if people have listened along tonight, and they've listened along tonight and they've been, this has been thoroughly entertaining and interesting, much more entertaining and interesting than a lot of things we've listened to in a long time, and they want to find you on the internet webs, where do you exist on the internet webs? Where can they find you, Chris?
So I try not to as much. That's not true, actually. So you should head over to tabletopgaming.co.uk and then go to the store drop down and go to the subscriptions and just buy 10 of them. That is the best way to support me and my beautiful family. Also just follow me on Twitter personally. I enjoy numbers getting larger. That's always fun. So if you could make that happen for me by, for example, retweeting all my really good tweets, that'd be great. My Twitter handle is @CJ Eggett. Yes. And yeah, but come look at the Tabletop Gaming website. Look at all the weird stuff we're doing. We've got like an indie games book club coming up, where it's Chris Bazette, the writer of The Wretched, amongst other things. Me and him are going to be hosting a book club, a fully interactive book club online, where we're reading indie RPGs and reading and playing ideally, but we kind of like invite everyone along. So we've just launched that. That's going to be kicking off next month. And that's if you're someone who was worried about like how to get into these games and whether you're going to do it right or whatever, this is a great way to kind of have a load of people around you saying, "Don't worry, it's fine." Also, we'll discuss how 3 different people. Or there's 3 different ways to do initiative because everyone slightly misunderstood the rules. And the thing is, it's fine, obviously. So if you're interested in that, that's really good. And then we're also doing play Ticket to Ride on a train as well. We've got a heritage steam train where you can come play Ticket to Ride with us. If you want to do that.
It's like kind of like Top Gear, but with cardboard.
Yes, you don't have to play Ticket to Ride. We've said like you can bring whatever game you want. So yeah, and you can bring your own booze if you really want. I shouldn't really say that, but it's fine.
Say that. You shouldn't really say that. We'll make sure that we put all of the links in the show notes so that we have got notes to show. And if you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then go to the internet webs and search for We Are Not Wizards, and you'll find us in all the different bright and smiley, shiny, whiny, timey places that are full of wonder and joy. That is also the internet. But you can find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and our website, which is we'renotwizards.com for podcasts, and we'renotwizards.co.uk has all of our written bits on it as well. And if you like what you've listened to tonight, then please go to Apple Podcasts and drop us a subscription. And if you like us even more, then consider dropping us a review. If you are going to be giving us a review, then don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed, and there's a lot of head here as it is. But don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Just give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average. We're just a little bit average.
That sounds like a terrible idea. Give them 10 stars if there's 10 to give. If there's 20, give them 20. Obviously.
iTunes goes up to 5.
Oh, okay, that's fine then.
iTunes goes up to 5. What is it with you
well,
people?
let's have 5 then.
5 fine.
But can we give people a quest when they write this review?
Yes, okay.
I think they should write the review as if. Actually, no, we shouldn't do that. As if they're sending a pitch in to We're Not Wizards magazine.
Yes.
But with the 3 things I suggested, which is the who you are, the summary, and the hook, the crunchy hook. Write those in your review, but maybe it's a magazine actually about being a sneaky wizard.
So for goodness sake, right? So maybe you're
just so maybe you're giving them tips.
I can't believe this. Right, okay. And there's only one more thing to do, and that's to thank. Well, there's 2 more things to do actually. That's to thank Chris for guesting. Thank you very, very much for coming along guesting. And the second thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Chris?
No.
It's so unconvincing, it's ridiculous. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right. Okay, so it's goodbye from the rather wonderful, rather fantastic CG Eggett. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful. And you want something on the tabletop? You want something that's a magazine? Go and check out the Tabletop magazine. Just read it, buy it, subscribe. Give them 10, give them 20, do whatever. Make them happy. Join them on the train. But until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.